Hi mate, my name's Alan Murphy. Welcome to the Ask Alan series of videos. The latest one we're going to do today is the data center evolution. I want to look at this from a network vendor perspective. I think I'll start by saying that over the last 20 years there's been very little innovation within the network in the data center. If we look back in 1993, where we had a user typically accessing a single application that sat on a single server, perhaps some storage, and then there was typically a network, a core aggregation access network that would support that infrastructure. So if we look at the evolution of the entire stack, we can see that at the user level there's been huge growth in the use of smartphones, as an example. Expected to reach about 1.5 billion mobile devices in 2012. The growth in the need to get access to information to drive the business, huge growth there. And also just in mobility devices. Massive growth there as well. When we look at the application and the server space, again, we see an awful lot of growth down here as well. Things like the growth of virtualization. Huge growth in things like virtual machines that's driving a lot of east-west traffic. And also big data and just the growth in applications in general is huge. But what we're seeing that sits underneath of that is exactly the same three-tier architecture in terms of the network. So all of the demands that sit above it are still expected to operate on a core aggregation access type of network. And what we're seeing is, the information availability at the user level, the virtualization roadmap at the server application level are just really putting an incredible strain on that three-tier architecture down at the network space. So we can clearly see that there's some investment needed down at the core aggregation access IP Ethernet network layer to support all of these things happening above. And what we can do is characterize those in 4 key areas. The first one is very much provisioning time. The amount of time it takes to provision the network to keep up with the agile application and user information demands is just unacceptable. The second area is very much a greater overhead at the network level. There's an awful lot of redundancy built into this type of infrastructure, which means it was only really designed to work at about 50% capacity. And then at this level here, we've got inefficient design and operation, which means the topology and architecture, things like spanning tree and the overall way that network is built is just not really conducive to lots of east-west traffic. It was designed for a north-south user to application traffic flow. And the last aspect is a lot of these networks are single vendor networks. And we're seeing a strong trend, whether that's in the marketplace or with the analyst community, moving towards a multi-vendor network to get best of breed network architectures into several pieces of the network to drive this evolution away from a static three-tier network to a very agile, robust, easy to manage underlying network infrastructure. And these challenges, the network layer, are really underlining that over this 20-year period, we've seen very much the burden of the network moving from the vendor to the customer. And at a time when resources and investment need to go higher in the stack to really drive the service delivery layers and the applications and the availability of information to the users to drive the core business, we don't really want to be investing heavily in terms of people and dollars down into that three-tier architecture in the data center. So at Brocade, we have a very clear view of how Ethernet fabrics, complementing our existing SAN fabrics within the customer base, can really address the inefficiencies down at that network level and make this stack a lot more agile and really deliver some of these dependencies back to the business and really connect IT to the core business the customer is in. So Brocade can really address this burden with some of the underlying network architectures we have and solutions like Ethernet Fabric. And we really want to ensure that this burden is removed from this three-tier architecture within the data center and replaced with a fabric architecture which really underpins the success of the data center. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. There'll be plenty more coming in the Ask Alan series, so watch out for them coming soon.